Hi, guys and gals. Welcome. I hope you guys enjoy this series as much as I have. Now, I'm all done with it, as probably you are too. And I had thought about running the two mediumship shows together, but I'm telling you what, after rewatching the episode 1 of Mediums today, I have so many talking points that there's no way we'd ever get through the two shows at one chance. We're talking about the Netflix show Surviving Death, and we are on the second week of the show, or the second episode of the show, which is talking about mediums. But this is only part 1. Next week, next Monday, we'll be doing part 2. I have notes, and then there's a little bit of questions. There's a few questions in the Immortal Peacock Facebook group. If you're not in there, I would suggest you get in there. It's a lot different than what you'll see on my Facebook page. It's much more personal, and I post more often, and it's like the real deal, and everybody can give and take and comment, and it's nice. It's a nice group. Make sure, however, that you answer the membership questions. If you answer the membership questions, you'll automatically be registered or admitted into the group. If you do not, you will not be admitted. And the reason for that is because I'm trying to keep the group bot free, spammer free. We're crossing our fingers, right? Let's get going. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have questions pertaining to what we're talking about tonight, please raise your hand and I'll try to get to as many of you as possible. Now, I want to start. I do have one hand raised right now, but as of this moment, I want to just jump into the material and then I'll start taking questions. All right. So if you haven't seen episode 1, you can see that on my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Lisa Bousson. You can see that there under Live with Lisa. Yeah. I will be posting this in a recorded format once I post it onto my YouTube page and it's edited. Let's jump into it. I've got a spreadsheet here, and I've got, oh my gosh, there's a lot to cover. So we're going to jump right into it. So right off the bat, the medium Sandra O'Hare, and she was the older gal that was first shown up, blonde hair, but down to here. She started seeing spirit around the age of 4, and it really struck me because that's exactly the age that I started seeing spirit. And like her, you don't tell too many people that you're seeing spirit, or after you do, and your parents say, shut up, this is ridiculous, no one's believing you, and you eventually learn how to keep quiet. And then sometimes, kind of like myself, you stop seeing spirit as well as you once did, but then other things always popped up, like knowing different things and interpreting different things and different spiritual messages and things like that. But we'll get into that later. So the big issue in this show is, now I know my friend Jeannie is here. Okay, so this week, mind you, I watched the first episode of Mediumship last week or 2 weeks ago, something like that. And this show had me so ticked off. This episode, oh my gosh. Well, it wasn't really the whole episode. It was more like the one guy, Mike Anthony, who, mind you, is as he calls himself a sometimes actor and a bartender. By no means, at least at that point, was he an expert in mediumship or psychic or stuff like that. At least that's not what I've read, not what has been mentioned. And I did a little background stuff on him just to validate, making sure I wasn't saying something that was bogus. But from what I've picked up, he's just an ordinary guy that is interested in this kind of stuff because of his father passing. So Mike Anthony says, and I quote, "Everything is extraordinary in this reading. And that was when he was talking about visiting I forget her name, the long-haired gals, Laura Lynn Jackson, that's her name. So he visits her, and he leaves the house, and the first thing you hear of him is everything is extraordinary. And then he goes to talk about his dad telling the medium about his hair. And that was apparently his trigger topic or trigger word, that if mediumship is a true thing, and if spirit really exists after physical death, then I know this is not a hoax. What he wants is validation. And I'm not saying validation is not right, because you should be validated. And there should be evidential information that comes through that is irrefutable proof that the medium didn't get the information off the internet, off social media, because it could be what you had for breakfast. It could be a conversation you just had yesterday, or maybe you just had your toenails painted, or things that don't end up online where people can find out about you. So there should be evidence of these things in any reading. However, my lovelies, when Mike goes on to say that, so let me back up. He says everything is extraordinary. Now, if that medium hadn't have said the word hair or talked about his hair, would then he have refuted everything that the medium had told him and justified his negative review, saying it wasn't valid because she didn't mention the hair? There's a couple things that happen here, my lovelies. One, again, and she even mentions it, mediums give you what they get from spirit. So if dad thinks it's a bunch of stupid BS that you want to talk about your goddamn hair, he's not going to give it to the medium. So she will not be able to give it to the sitter. As I mentioned last week, this is a three-way conversation. The medium, the sitter, which is the client, and the spirit world. So without all three on board, we have a problem here. There's a miscommunication going on somewhere, and it invariably will happen. If a person who's uneducated, such as Mark Anthony seemed to be when he went into those readings, uneducated in that he might not have realized how mediumship works, and then allow the medium to work as spirit wants them to work. Right? Because every medium works a little bit differently. So that got me really heated. So this so-and-so would refute an extraordinary reading, in his words, because his dad didn't mention his hair. It does happen. So here's the thing. When that type of experience happens to me, and I mentioned it last week as well. So let's say, like Mike, he's in this reading. Let's say I've got this client in the reading with me, and it's been a really good reading, and it's been really lovely. And at the very end, mind you, this has happened. Well, I gave my dad a clue word, or if dad is really here, what's my new dog's name? Here's the thing. If I go looking for the dog's name, or whatever the piece of evidence that they require, it puts me into my left brain, which is where spirit is not. So any medium will be wrong 100% of the time if they're in their left brain. However, if someone had said that toward the beginning of the reading, like, I'd like to know my dog's name, and just drop it. then the medium can go on doing their business, doing their stuff. And if spirit deems it necessary to drop Fifi's name at the medium, then they'll get it. But if not, it won't happen. And see what happens then, the medium is maintaining the right brain focus where spirit speaks. So there's no chance of that medium going into their left brain and getting the information wrong. Now, any medium worth their salt would not get triggered by that, right? I used to, every medium does. But now I educate on how mediumship works. Spirit drop it in our laps and we spit it out. Can I ask you for your name? Yes. Silently, I often do. Can I ask them for their cause of death? Yes, I often do. However, I don't demand an answer. I wait for it to come. I wait for spirit to provide it to me. So I maintain the right brain focus. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's okay to expect real evidence and not just generic fluff, which is what he calls it, or something like that. And I agree with that. Names are great, but don't expect names. Names are probably the hardest things to give. Now, even Mike even said that there was a lot of names that came down that he didn't understand. In every reading, there's information that happens that the sitter will not understand, whether they don't have a reference point for it, or it's the memory of the spirit and not the person who's sitting. It could be any number of things. But I'm telling you what, I can't even count the number of people who email me, text me, Facebook me, or whatever the next day saying, oh my gosh, I put it together, or oh my gosh, I talked to mom about this and she validated it, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes even months later, this happens. When we receive a reading, we're in this receptive state. However, we're also in this state of wanting specific things to come through or expecting specific things or specific people to come through. Honey, throw those out the door. Throw those out the door. Just ask for specific relatives. Yeah, you can ask mom to come through. You can ask dad or whomever, right? You can ask for a specific spirit and say, come on, I'm going to be here. Let's go. But then leave the information and what they want to provide to them. Mm-hmm. All right. And the specific evidence should be, again, names are the hardest, so don't expect that. But if I get dad is here and he had a heart attack, I also get a reference to Air Force around him. He's showing me what looks like a great big class ring or some kind of like a big either military or class ring type thing that has some kind of purple or blue stone in it. And I also feel like there's some problems with his legs, blah, blah, blah. So evidence, which is all validated. So what if I don't get his name? So what? He didn't give it to me. But if everything else is right, we got your dad. Yeah. So a little bit of that. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sweetie?
I'm just fine, thank you.
What's your question, honey?
So spirit can provide a validation with or without asking, because something very similar happened between you and I when you did a public reading for me in Rochester.
Okay.
You might remember my grandmother came through and told me to put my moccasins back on, and I pulled them out of my purse.
No way! I don't remember this.
Yes, it was at Updog up in Rochester.
Okay, yeah.
And you told me it was apparently my grandmother, and she was telling you to tell me to put my moccasins back on. And I started to laugh, and I reached down into my purse and I pulled my moccasins out, and you just about lost it. And we never asked for any kind of validation. We weren't even sure it was my grandmother. But growing up, she would always tell me, ladies don't go barefoot. So I was to always have what she referred to as my house shoes on.
Oh, your house shoes. I love it.
Yeah, and that particular night, it was at Up Dog, so we had to remove our shoes. And before you even saw me, I took my shoes off and I put them out. My purse is the size of a tote. And I put my moccasins inside of my coat and went walking in and sat down. And you turned to me and gave me all these different things that it could have been my grandmother or somebody else's grandmother. And when we determined that it was mine, you looked at me and said, she wants you to put your moccasins on. And
That's
I just
so funny.
died because I reached into my purse, pulled them out, and you were floored.
Yeah, I think I would have been, but I don't remember. It's funny, because some of these great stories, because there's so many of them, Cindy, but thank you for sharing that. And you're right. In a public setting, there can be what I consider piggybacks where multiple spirit come through with the exact same information. And so I have to determine, or spirit has to determine, where we're actually going with this reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Cindy.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Take care, sweetie.
You too.
So every medium works a little bit differently. We might have an intent when we begin working with spirit. For instance, when I started working with spirit, I started doing psychic art. Now, later on in the show, like next week, I think it is, where Joe Scheel comes on doing psychic art. He draws the loved one and then delivers message. That's what I was doing. That's what I did when I first started. And just over time, people just started coming to me for straight mediumship. So I dropped the art part of it. But so every medium works a little bit differently. And whether we have an intent for our work or not, our spirit people will direct us where we most need to be and where our strengths will lie in the future. And then we have to trust them that they know a little bit more than what we do, because they can foresee what's going to be happening and how our own innate gifts are growing and developing. So as a sitter, everybody, make sure that you're open-minded as to how the mediumship or how the medium works, because everyone will work slightly different. So getting back to Mike, my buddy Mike, he wanted to say there was a lot of ordinary stuff, incorrect names. However, look at the reading on the whole, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote all this out. I was so angry. I was voice texting into my phone. Yes. Oh, yes. So he does mention one thing that is very important to hear. So yay, Mike. The evidence comes through as important. Yes, of course it is. However, just as equally important is how the evidence comes through. The qualities, the voice inflections, the mannerisms, the characteristics of your spirit person will and can manifest in the medium. So if you look at, for instance, this is just off the top of my head, maybe your grandfather tells the medium that his brother's bamboozling everyone. Well, bamboozle isn't a word that the medium would be using. That's a grandfather word, right? But sure enough, Grandpa used to use that word. Or the word shyster, or if Dad always went like this with his hair, or somebody always had a goatee and he would always do this. So if you see the medium doing this, because I rub my nose a lot because there's a lot of men with mustaches, right? So things like that. So how the evidence comes through, the qualities of it, the voice inflections, the personality can come through. So look at that also. And because that is so important, it is so important. For instance, as I mentioned before, I used to see spirit very, very well. I couldn't tell if they were living or dead. However, it freaked me the hell out. So now I don't see spirit as well anymore because I've kind of shut it down a bit. However, I have them come sit on me. So I feel them and I feel their energy. I feel so I'm kind of inside them. You get a lot of that voice inflections and the mannerisms and things like that too. All right. So then we go on to physical and mental mediumship. About 2 million years ago, I was in a workshop with James Van Praagh. And he went around, there had to be 150 people there, telling everybody if they were a physical or mental medium. He told me I was a physical medium. Well, back then, I didn't know what the hell that was. I didn't know the difference. Well, here's the thing. Mental mediums, everyone has mediumship capabilities. The degree in which you develop is how much focus you put on it. Now, granted, like all things, some people are going to be more adept at it than not. Like, look at basketball players. I can't hit the broadside of a barn, but I can play basketball, if you would call it that, versus, some pro basketball, Shaq or something like that, So, same with mediumship. So everyone is born a mental medium. Everyone is. The accuracy and the level you develop is all in accordance with how much you study and how much you work at it. Mental mediums will not probably produce ectoplasm, will not probably be doing any sort of transfiguration, working with levitation, things like that. It just takes a stronger natural ability. Now, physical mediums are definitely born, just like mental mediums. However, it's not something that someone can really learn well. You can try, but if you have any level of success, you're a physical medium. That's all it is. You still have to study. You still have to practice. Oh, hell yes. It took me years to learn how to channel. And as much as I did it, I still did not consider myself adept at it, not like some people I've seen. Also, at this point, there's talk about using the table. You know how they showed the table levitating or, in the middle of the air? I've never seen that. Although I'm not going to say it doesn't exist because I have not experienced it, so I don't know. I'm considering myself, and I always have, an open-minded skeptic. Yeah, I'm an open-minded skeptic in that for me, I like things to be proven. I want to experience it myself. And even though I haven't possibly experienced something, it doesn't mean that I don't believe you can do it, or I don't believe that you've not experienced or have experienced it, right? So being an open-minded skeptic, and here's the thing, I always thought it was a bunch of crap. Then my older sister and I went to a table tipping class, and let me tell you, my impression changed 100%. I was open-minded. I went in fully willing to participate and play and let's have fun and blah, blah, blah. I'm glad I did because I would have missed out on what a wonderful experience that was. So we were in Lilydale in New York, and I was taking a class. I can't remember the name of the teacher, though. She was an older lady. But anyways, she had probably about 4 tables there, small tables that maybe you would stand up and maybe just be able to touch the tips of your fingers on the top. And my sister and I joined up with another man who was a jerk. He was just being a jerk. And you could feel him pushing on the table, really pushing. And both my sister and I said, his name was Stephen. So we told him to stop. And he actually pulled completely away from the table. My sister and I started, and mind you, we're just barely touching it. Like it's just like you can see how lightly my fingers are touching my hand, very, very lightly, just fingertip touching, barely. And that table started rocking back and forth. Let me tell you, it was like going this, like this to this. And my sister and I were like, oh, look at this whole crap. And then this table proceeded to dance, is what the instructor called it, around the room. And let me tell you, my sister is just as large as a gal as I am. And we were almost at a little bit of a jog around the room following this table. And all the time we were just barely touching the top of it, just barely touching the top. Now, yes, table tipping has been used years and years and years. One tip right for yes and left for no, or tip once for yes or twice for no, whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Rap on it, blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling you, and that's why I always kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever. But after this experience with table tipping, and let me tell you, it was table dancing. It was remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. So, anyways, so cool. All right, kids, any questions so far? Raise your hand if you have questions. So what kind of question do you have for me, Penny?
So when you were talking about table tipping, it reminded me of when I was a kid and my sister and I would use our Ouija board.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the same concept because we would just barely touch that
Yes.
planchette.
Yes.
That Ouija board would freak us out, but
yep,
in a good way. And it did. It would
zoom
spell out stuff, and I'm trying to write it while we're spelling it, and sometimes it would make sense. But it's like they're talking through a fan going around and around really fast, a fan, and trying they would describe it as like a fan that's going around and around and around, and they're trying to see us through this. So it's like
yeah. The same type, there are not, well, let me put it this way. Every spirit is not adept at moving objects, all right? Moving the energy enough to get something that's physical to move. Not every spirit can do that. So if you want to talk to Tom, Dick, or Harry, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. But I'm excited that you were able to get that type of activity out of the Ouija board. Now, of course, so many people like poo-poo the Ouija board, but it was made by Hasbro, for God's sake. It's a piece of cardboard with a plastic planchet. Seriously. So it's all in how you use it. You could say the same thing about oracle cards, tarot cards, a pendulum, whatever. It's all in how you use it.
Now that's an interesting thing to keep in mind, because I wondered about that. It's just made by a game company.
I don't know, but I think it's Hasbro. To be honest with you, I think I have one in my closet right here. I can't remember. I think it's Hasbro, but whatever. So it's just a game. So, all right, Penny. Well, thank you so much for joining me online where we can see your face.
I will be here, but I'll stop my video.
Okay, let me see. Let me change to attendee. I can do that. I can do that for you, I think. All right, let me go to the Q&A. Penny also says, is it difficult for the spirit to communicate between their world and our world? How do they use symbols? Well, no, it's not difficult at all. However, they do need to learn how to do it. It's all mostly telepathic communication. And they use symbols. For instance, they might show us an apple. For instance, the apple, of course, is my symbol for teacher. They know how I'm going to interpret something, so they'll show me an apple. Or they might show me, so oranges for me are Florida, lemons are California. So things like that. They know how we're going to interpret, and they use the best method that they believe that we can accurately get to what they're trying to convey. So they might tell us words. They might show us an image. They might make us feel something. It really is up to them as to how they should decide to deliver the message. All right. In a physical medium, does spirit enter the body? Not always. Not always. It depends upon what the physical medium is doing. Is the physical medium channeling or just doing readings? So I am a physical medium, but I work as a mental medium. I just talk to spirit. I didn't get why her voice changed. Is this why it did? Okay. Yes, that is why her voice changed. Now, just as we talked about spirit using their energy to affect physical things, where your voice box, your larynx, is a physical thing. If the spirit enters within the body, they have full reign over what's going on here so that they can use that voice box. Now, granted, and this I don't know, I'll be honest. Is it because he's a man that his voice sounds low? Or is it because it's a child that the voice sounds high? Now, if spirit, this is theory, if spirit has the ability to affect physical energy or physical matter, would they not have the same ability to affect it, to affect the range, the vocal range? I just don't know. Now, I also have a child spirit guide, but when I channel him, he comes through just like my voice, maybe a little bit higher, but not much. And it's very common for me when I channel to if I'm channeling a man, the voice does come deeper. Heather writes, why did Tommy's voice seem so fake? It was like she was trying too hard. Yeah, I had an issue with that. Mediumship number 2, which is next week, I'll go more into that black box and the seance room. And I'm telling you what, I might have a few things to say, let me tell you. So tune in next week. All right. What that Tommy or whatever his name was really hard for me to believe. I understand that. I do understand that. And I kind of felt like, do we have a charlatan here? And that's where the problem is, because again, as I consider myself an open-minded skeptic, I'm not going to tell somebody that it's wrong. However, it does seem a little weird. But again, we're going to go into that more next week. We get into the seance aspect of it, okay? So I'm going to promote Jeannie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, why don't I have your...
I'm not
there
sure.
you are. Yay! Hi, honey.
Hi.
What's your question? Or do you have something to add?
No, I have a question. You may have just answered this, but I'm not sure if I quite got it. Is channeling a form of physical mediumship, mental mediumship, both, none? Is it its own thing?
Nope, it's physical. It's a physical mediumship. Yeah.
Okay.
So I want you to keep in mind that there's different levels of channeling. Channeling can be, for instance, I'm teaching right now, and actually Jeannie's in the class. I'm teaching inspirational writing and speaking, and that's kind of like channeling. It's very, very light, very, very light, okay? Now there's trance, there's deep trance, there's dead trance. So there's different levels where, for instance, and I don't know, probably just deep trance where I'm at when I go into a trance to channel, is I actually see myself as outside my body. And then I don't know anything that happens. But I know that there's some mediums, and when I first began channeling, that I would still be in my body and a light energy would come in, like maybe one of my guides or an angel or something like that. So not a heavy duty, big lesson, that kind of thing, like a heavy duty, dense energy. So does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. If it doesn't, holler.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
All right, let me get back to my notes here. And we'll talk about this more again next week, like I said. But there is a huge populace of mental mediums. Physical mediums, not so much anymore, because there's so many that were accused of fraud. And I can understand that. Boy, can I understand that. But we'll talk a little bit about ectoplasm later on. We'll talk more about that next week, where that really becomes evident, as well as the black box and things like that. So then we go to the Mediumship Retreat in the Netherlands, and physical manifestation of spirit is a physical medium ability. transfiguration, ectoplasm, table tipping, anything like that. Levitation is a manifestation of a physical medium. Transfiguration is when spirit sits on your body. So you're kind of like in their auric field, and your face actually changes. So people in the room can actually see that. Now, I've done what I call a red light seance, where you can see that actually, and everybody in the group works with the red light, and you can actually see spirit transfiguring their physical face. However, I haven't done that in years. Of course, now with COVID, we can't do it, so whatever. Ectoplasm. Do I believe in it? Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. Open-minded skeptic here. I've never seen it. All right, I've never seen it, and I've seen some damn good physical mediums, but I've never seen ectoplasm. Does it exist? I can't say. I just don't know. I just don't know. Now, Association for Psychical Research has debunked or bunked, whatever, a bunch of people who are claiming to have ectoplasmic emanations. And then there's some that they can't debunk. So I have to go with those who are actually studying that field, because I'm definitely not the expert here. All right, so then they talk about spiritualism. I am a spiritualist minister. Spiritualism is not a religion. It's not a religion. It's a belief. Some would call it belief system, whatever. However, spiritualism can run parallel or as an adjunct to Christianity or Buddhism or whatever. So you can have both. Now, I call myself a spiritualism Christian. Yeah. As a spiritualist, we believe in all the masters. Buddha, Maitreya, Kuan Yin, El Morye, Jesus, all the masters. We don't believe that there was just one. And because of that, well, here, you'll see I have a cross here and a baby Buddha, and then there's the laughing Buddha. So, there's so many different things and so many different teachings and all the different religions and belief systems that I think that we can gain from each of them. However, Jesus is my dude. That he was just a man with extraordinary gifts. I guess the premise for spiritualism is that we believe in life after death, that there's more to it. So when I became a spiritualist minister, I just studied the Bible. Oh my God, did I have to study the Bible? Like 3 different Bibles we had to study. And then they started talking about sitting in circle and it requiring dedication, because the spirit circle that they were speaking of, the group of people, I think they were saying the same group has sat together for 2 years. And this is once a week, every week for 2 years. That's a hell of a lot of dedication. And I'm telling you what, more than I've ever seen in this day and age. The longest I've ever been able to get a group to sit together was maybe 6 weeks. Truly. The purpose behind sitting in circle is development. However, the purpose also behind all this is to build that group's energy. And granted, you all grow at different rates because you are who you are. But to build that group's energy, to interact and build that energy with spirit. So this group, this core group, will have a group of elders, like spiritual guides, that come in and help this core group. And if people are popping in and popping out, blah, 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 the energy changes. The energy changes. So it's sitting in circle is a great, great way to develop your mediumship. But I've not seen a group ever that can last that long. Unfortunately, I don't know if this has anything to do with Jeannie's question. So when I was sitting in circle and channeling, I would only allow the highest and finest of spiritual beings to enter within. I don't want Uncle Stan coming through and sitting on me. No. But that's a personal preference. I wanted a spirit that could advise or talk to the group as a whole unit, that could impart wisdom that each sitter could use. Uncle Stan couldn't do that. So, but again, that's totally up to the person. Okay. So Cindy asks, so spirit will or can do this without asking for validation? I don't know. Cindy, type in, honey. Are you talking about channeling? Spirit can hop in our bodies without validation or without asking? If that's what you're talking about, the answer would be yes. However, a higher level spiritual being would never do that. Would never do that. Not of the highest and finest. Yeah, they could. And that's one of the reasons why I always suggest you guys ground yourself every morning and put your bubble up. More often than not, I'm telling you to do it because of the physical people, not the spirit people. Seriously, the spirit. Okay, so here's the thing. So many people worry about spirit attachments or evil spirits attacking them. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. However, remember, you're going to attract that which you are. You will attract that which you are. What do I have to offer someone who's a drug addict or someone who is an alcoholic? Or what do I have to offer someone who's just evil? Like, what are they going to get from me? Seriously, whatever. So let's move forward. Could someone channel without belief in Buddha? Yeah, you can. You don't have to believe in any one thing to channel. That's part of being a physical medium. So you can channel anybody you want. It doesn't matter what you believe. Like, it doesn't. You don't have to believe in Christianity or Buddhism or Taoist, or you don't have to believe in any of that. Spirit will know. They'll know your aptitude. They'll know your heart. They'll know your intention. So you don't have to be any one particular belief. I love when it showed the man from India. I forget what it starts with an M, but I can't remember his name. Receiving a reading from a medium. And I think the medium's last name was Dykes or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the medium was definitely not hitting evidence on the head. He was not. The names were wrong. The situations were wrong. And he even said, don't try to make it fit. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Not every medium will be able to read for every person, right? I told you that. It really is up to, we raise, as a medium, we raise our vibration up. Medium has to maintain that. And by doing meditations all the time and keeping our energy healthy and that kind of thing, right? So we have this radio station. Spirit has to meet that radio station. They have to find that radio station and tune in. Then the medium's going to know that they're there. If spirit cannot do that, the medium's not going to get the information across clearly. Now, keep in mind, I do believe that medium was getting the man's dad. However, obviously, there was not a real clear communication going on there. The spirit was not able to wholly tap into the frequency to get a clear reading. And sometimes it happens, whether it's a general reading like his, or possibly maybe the spirit is new to the spirit world. And in that case, they simply have to learn how to tune into that radio station, and or the reading will be very choppy and piecey and that kind of thing, which it was a little bit. So we don't know, however, what happened on the back end of that reading, because what happens is, and what I do, I don't know what he does because I don't know him, but what I do, for instance, is if I start getting no's, then I ask for more evidence from spirit, because the information, the evidence that comes through does not always come through with like one word. It might come through as in grass, shed, saw. So they're talking about Grandpa had a workshop in the garage that was in the backyard. Okay. So the piece fill in the story, right? So for instance, when I get a no from my sitter, I'll go back to spirit and get some more evidence, because maybe they're trying to tell me a story instead of just bringing me a one-word thing, right? Again, that could have been happening on the back end. We just don't see it. I don't know. But I really commend the medium in saying, you know what, we don't have a connection here. That's something that no medium wants to do, because we want to help. That's what we're here for. We want to help. But it happens, and there's usually no rhyme or reason, unless possibly the medium is ill, or the medium is just like not feeling well, or the medium is absolutely stressed out, or the medium, his or herself, has recently had someone pass away and they're really emotionally, out of it a little bit. So there's all different kinds of things that could possibly go on, but I really got to commend that medium. I love that. And I thought that was really important for everybody to know. Okay, let's see. Do we have any questions about that? The the ectoplasm really freaked me out. It is kind of a weird thing. It looks like gauze, kind of, or cheesecloth or something like that. And from what I've heard, the ectoplasm is like slimy. But again, I've also heard that it can harm the medium. And what we saw in Nicole DeHaas, her belly was burned. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that is the case. Now, I've also heard that if the ectoplasm completely leaves the body, that means the spirit's going to leave the body and the medium will pass away. Like I said, I cannot say this with 100% certainty, because I don't know. I've never experienced it. So take it with a grain of salt. Cindy, let's see here. All right, Cindy, you're coming on, honey. Oh, just a minute. Unmute. There you go.
Okay.
Great. Hi, honey.
Hi. Question I have. The guy with the haircut wanted his dad to validate his haircut. Prior to that statement, he was talking about things that he had done on his way there, or things that were said on their way to meet with the medium and what have you.
Right.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least it does to me. It's those everyday mundane things that prove spirit's always with you.
Okay, that's
right. So let's say on the way to his meeting, he was talking about eating popcorn. And then the spirit says, were you eating popcorn in the car? Or what's with eating popcorn in the car? You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's those simple things, like I said again, that cannot be looked up on Google or Facebook or things like that.
Right.
That are so poignant here. They're so important to show the continuity, that they're there all the time, not just for the high points. Okay. So for me, it happens a lot. I can't tell you how many times spirit will tell a woman, did you just get your toenails painted blue? Yes. Or something like that, right? So it's something goofy that no one could have possibly known.
Okay, and that, all right. When I saw that episode, I kind of thought to myself, well, he was asking for validation with this haircut thing.
Right.
But then they were describing things prior to that were said or done on the way to meet that medium.
Right.
And I thought, well, if it wasn't legit, how did this medium know what they were talking about?
My point exactly. Lack of knowledge speaks here, but then that should also be brought forward. That should also be brought forth, that his lack of knowledge is evident, right? Instead of just saying that the evidence that's coming through is ridiculous. Now, he did say, like I said earlier, that the some of the information was extraordinary, right? So he did validate that, but at other times he's really, not a good thing.
When spirit steps in, how soon after death can they do that?
Immediately. Yeah, the earliest I've ever communicated with spirit was for my niece, my husband's niece. And it was 2 hours.
Wow.
It was 2 hours, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So it can happen. Now, some mediums prefer to wait maybe up to 3 months or something like that. But you know what? Honestly, what I always learned, like back in my earlier development level ages, was that it gives spirit a chance to perfect tapping into energy, which it does, right? But more often, I want to say it gives the sitter time to grieve so that they're ready to accept the information that comes through.
Okay. All right.
All right, sweetheart.
I'm looking for answers basically that from the moment my husband passed. And
Yeah, don't tell me more. If you want a reading, great, but this
yeah,
is
we
not.
can do that at a later date. Yeah, it's just I want to know if they're able to do that from the moment they pass, or
For the most part, yes. Like I said earlier in the show, that it might be choppy, might be a little bit PC, but we still get the message across.
okay.
Okay, it just might not flow as easily, but that's fine.
Yeah.
All right, honey. Thank you for playing.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Carol, come on in, girlfriend.
Yes.
Hi, Carol.
Hello. Sorry about that.
There you go. Okay, you got a question for me, honey?
Yeah, it's for what you mentioned earlier about the energy and stuff that you gotta vibrate higher or something. Does the sitter's energy make a difference?
Yes, absolutely it does. And it's not the energy. I'm going to back up.
Or is will to
Yes.
actually get the message?
Well, yes, it does matter, but it's not like they have to develop their own energy, right?
Yeah.
But when someone comes in like this, like, prove it to me, you know what? I have to talk them down.
Okay.
I have to educate them. And because with that type of attitude, it's almost like there's such a wall there. And, you know, a lot of times it's fear, or maybe a husband was dragged into the appointment by his wife, or, you know, whatever the reason, right? Whatever the reason. But I can't say usually. I always speak about it. Speak about what they're doing.
Okay.
And I ask them, please lower your guard. And I ask them if they want a successful reading. Do you want this to succeed?
Okay.
And if their answer is yes, then I say, then relax, please relax. Because what's happening is it's not me getting this. It's not that. I don't give a crap. However, when their spirit people see that, oh, they don't want to talk about this. They don't want to talk about that. They're too afraid that they're going to cry. They don't want to talk about this. What else do they have to talk about then?
Yeah.
Right? Your spirit people can see that your attitude is poor and you don't want to be here. Well, then the information that they're giving the medium is, yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. But you're right. Like our friend Mike,
Yeah.
It was almost like he wanted it to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In some instances. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for chiming in, Carol.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, honey. Nicole DeHaas says you choose to become a medium to heal yourself. What are your thoughts about her statement? You choose to become a medium to heal yourself. Oh, and you know what? Yes, but I don't like the wording. If you are a physical medium, you're born to this, you kind of, things will happen, and even mental mediums, I guess, to a lesser degree, but things will happen in your life where you cannot refute that there's something more going on here to this world. There's got to be someone on the other side pulling the strings, whether it's God, Jesus, spirit guides, loved ones, whomever. Someone on the other side has control over what's going on here, because there's too many weird things going on. So you're going to experience it anyways. If I choose to become a medium to heal myself, I don't know if I agree with that. And you know why? It's the word heal. I chose to become a medium so that I could be of service. I chose to become a medium to develop myself spiritually. Does that mean I'm healing myself? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. Now, could healing happen? Yeah, but that's not my choice. That wasn't my choice, not at least not my decision. I felt like, like I talked to Carol here. Someone's pulling the strings, and either I'm going batshit crazy or someone in spirit is trying to get my attention. So I chose to find a way to learn, and that was just by coincidence, but that's another story. All right. So Heather's also a medium. She says, I did not ask for this, but yes, I needed the healing. There you go. So it all is in the verbiage, I suppose. So maybe she did it to heal herself. I have no idea what that means, right? Because you can, as a medium, learn how to heal and use your mediumship. And that was even brought forward later on in the show by, I forget what her name is. I do mention it, but we'll get to that in a bit. Most of us, we don't ask for this. This is not something that we choose. It just happens. So the black box. So the black box and ectoplasm we'll be talking about next week. The black box I've experienced, and I will share some pretty cool stuff. Ectoplasm, we'll talk about a little bit that more. Again, next week we'll be talking about the second episode of Mediumship for Surviving Death. And before we close out, my lovelies, can a spirit choose a fragrance they want you to smell? Oh, you betcha. You betcha. And very often it's something that you would recognize, of course, because, for instance, my paternal grandfather comes through smelling like cigars. My maternal grandfather smells like cherry pipe tobacco. It's just like a nice hello. Whenever I smell it, of course, you look around for any logical explanation, right? But then I know my grandfather's here, and then if my grandfather's here, then I know my mom is there, and my aunt is there, and my uncle's there, and yeah, the whole gang is present. But that is just something I love, So, and every once in a while, when I'm doing a reading, if your clairolfactance, in other words, your sniffer, is also psychic, you can smell perfume or cigarettes or whatever, grease or anything that has an odor or an aroma that you have knowledge of in your head. Yeah, exciting. All right. Cindy says her husband was a heavy smoker. She smelled cigarette smoke up until 2 months ago. Now I smell Aqua de Gio, which is an aftershave. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cindy, you can count on it. Your husband's really trying to come through really, really hard. And I just love that. All right. So there is 2 questions in the Facebook group Immortal Peacock. And again, if you're listening in from the Lisa Bousson Facebook page, you'll really want to join the Immortal Peacock, but you've got to make sure to answer the membership questions. Roberta asks about the ectoplasm. What happens after it's used by the spirit? Does it dissolve or vaporize? No, it kind of retracts back into the medium because it is said to be like the visceral fluid. Some people consider it part of the aura. Some people have said it is part of the spirit body, which is different than the soul. But so there's different theories on it, right? But it retracts back into the medium. Yeah, because it's not a vapor. It's not a vapor. It's actually supposed to be a physical thing. We're looking at Mediumship Part 2 next week, next Monday. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned a little bit, and thanks for chiming in. Bye, guys. Have a nice night.